Wordsworth, Romney, obsolescence.
You walk into this room at your own risk, because it leads to the future. Not a future that will be, but one that might be. This is not a new world. It is simply an extension of what began in the old one. It has patterned itself after every dictator who has ever planted the ripping imprint of a boot on the pages of history since the beginning of time. It has refinements, technological advances, and a more sophisticated approach to the destruction of human freedom. But like every one of the superstates that preceded it, it has one iron rule. Logic is an enemy and truth is a menace. This is Mr. Romney Wordsworth, in his last 48 hours on Earth. He's a citizen of the state, but will soon have to be eliminated. Because he is built out of flesh, and because he has a mind.
You've been under investigation, Mr. Wordsworth, for the mandatory period of 1 year and 11 months. You're found to be obsolete. The purpose of the hearing is to make a finding in the matter and make a sentence accordingly. Do you understand that, Mr. Wordsworth? Your occupation, Mr. Wordsworth?
A librarian, sir.
A librarian. Having to do with books.
Yes, sir. Books.
Since there are no more books, Mr. Wordsworth, there are no more libraries. The field investigators in your sector have classified you as obsolete. Your rights are as follows, Mr. Wordsworth. You are to be liquidated within a period of 48 hours. You are obsolete, Mr. Wordsworth.
A lie. No man is obsolete.
You have no function, Mr. Wordsworth. You're an anachronism, like a ghost from another time.
I am nothing more than a reminder to you that you cannot destroy truth by burning pages.
You're a bug, Mr. Wordsworth, a crawling insect, an ugly, misformed little creature who has no purpose here, no meaning.
I am a human being.
Delusions, Mr. Wordsworth. Delusions that you inject into your veins with printer's ink. The narcotics that you call literature, poetry, essays of all kind, all of it an opiate. You have nothing but spindly limbs and a dream, and the state has no use for your kind.
I don't care. I tell you, I don't care. I'm a human being. I exist. And if I speak one thought aloud, that thought lives, even after I'm shoveled into my grave.
The Chancellor, the late Chancellor, was only partly correct. He was obsolete. But so is the state, the entity he worshipped. Any state, any entity, any ideology that fails to recognize the worth, the dignity, the rights of man, that state is obsolete.
Hallo allemaal, welkom bij RHTV Live. Hello to you all, welcome to RHTVLive. Of course, we're going to talk geopolitics. And today, we're going to talk about Turkey, right? Ja, vandaag gaan we het over Turkije hebben. En ook een beetje geschiedenis aanhalen. De Sykes-Picot-verdrag. En, maar eerst gaan we even dit hier bekijken. Dit is een brandbrief, een belangrijke brief naar Rutte. So this is a pastor, and he has a very important letter to our Prime Minister Rutte, and we're going to take a listen to this here.
Mark Rutte, regering en overheid. Den Haag, zondag 26 juni 2022. Zeer geachte heer Rutte, regering en overheid. Heeft u wel iets van een gevoel, maar niet het diepe besef dat we vandaag op een ongelooflijk groot en cruciaal kruispunt van het bestaan der Nederlanden staan. De toekomst van onze kinderen en kleinkinderen staat op het spel. En hangt af van de beslissingen die u als regering en overheid van ons land neemt. Dit in verband met het beleid dat u voert ten aanzien van de boeren. Alles binnenin mij voelt zich gedreven u te waarschuwen dat uw huidige koers met het opkopen en het doen laten verdwijnen van een heel groot deel van onze boeren zal leiden tot het knechten van ons volk. Met daaronder ook ons nageslacht. Wij waren een rijk gezegend land met in Slochteren enorme gasbel. Waardoor we in staat waren om met goed beleid in koude en barre tijden, bij wijze van spreken, tot in lengte van dagen ons volk in leven te houden en te verwarmen. Door hebzucht gedreven hebben wij onze grote rijkdom in slechts enkele jaren verkwanseld en zijn nu afhankelijk geworden van derden. En kijk waar deze koers ons vandaag heeft gebracht. Dezelfde koers vaart u nu ook ten aanzien van onze boeren.
So this guy is talking about the future of the Netherlands. Talking to the Prime Minister about the future of the Netherlands. And he's saying you have to walk another path. You know, don't go this way. This is dangerous for the Dutch population. And he's talking about the farmers that are being bought out by our government. And, you know, really, really sad what's happening in the Netherlands. Ja, we hebben een landbouwakkoord. En ja, dat is niet echt een akkoord, maar een akkoord volgens de coalitie. Er is niet echt gepraat rondom de boeren en zoiets. Nee, dat doen we niet, hè. Nee. Dus, we had an accord with agriculture, right? But the farmers stepped out of the talks with the government and said, nope, we're not going to abide by these accords. And so there's a new crisis brewing in the Netherlands.
Wat een rijkdom en wat een zegen zijn de boeren van ons land. Meer dan u kunt beseffen. Velen van u zien niet dat zij het voedsel produceren waarmee zij in slechte en in barre tijden ons volk in leven kunnen houden. En vergis u niet, barre tijden zullen er komen. En uw koers maakt dat we van derden afhankelijk zullen worden en we uiteindelijk geknecht zijn. Waardoor ons volk zal omkomen van de honger.
So this guy is saying that since the farmers are sold out, we will perish from hunger. And this and that. You know, it's very, very sad to see that our government is, you know, against the population. Now, I have a question here from Cat Force. Dus het akkoord is definitief. Nou, de LTO, die is dus samen met de regering gaan praten. En de regering zegt eigenlijk van ja, dit zijn onze voorwaarden, hier moet je aan voldoen. En de LTO is weggestapt. Dus er was wel een akkoord tussen de coalitiepartijen. Die hebben een akkoord gemaakt om het landbouw gebeuren. Maar er is niet gepraat met de boeren. En nu zijn de boeren aan tafel geschoven. Althans, één van die drie partijen. Je hebt de LTO, Land- en Tuinbouworganisatie. Je hebt de Agra-actie. En je hebt Farmers Defence Force. Nou, de LTO die kwam aan tafel met de regering. Nu zijn ze van tafel weggelopen. Ja. Dus, so you had 3 farmers organizations, right? The LTO, the Agri Action, and Farmers Defense Force. And one of those 3 organizations was talking to the government, and they stepped out of the negotiations with the government. So there was an accord on table for the 4 ruling parties, right? But they never talked to the farmers about this. Ja. Goed, we kijken door.
En daarom is er niets, maar dan ook helemaal niets, wat deze koers rechtvaardigt. Mijn moeder, die aanstaande week 95 hoopt te worden, een overlever van die verschrikkelijke Tweede Wereldoorlog, vertelde ons kinderen menigmaal hoe zij als jong meisje tijdens de oorlog met haar zus langs de boeren ging om wat voedsel te bemachtigen. Het waren dan ook vaak de boeren die mijn ouders en hun ouders en vele anderen hebben voorzien in voedsel in een tijd van overleven.
So now he's talking about the Second World War, and the farmers supported the population of the Netherlands. You know, they gave food away. And he's basically saying that the farmers are very, very important for a country. Ja, boeren zijn heel belangrijk voor een land. En heel veel mensen hebben dat gewoon niet door. Heel veel mensen zijn de contact met de natuur kwijt. Ja, die denken dat melk uit de supermarkt komt in plaats van uit een koe. Serieus. Maar goed, dat is een mooi filmpje om te gaan bekijken. We laten natuurlijk niet alles zien. We hebben veel op tafel liggen. So this is a pastor saying, warning the cabinet, please don't go this way. You know, it leads to poverty and destruction of the Netherlands, basically, when you sell out your farmers and stuff like that. Dus we gaan ook even kijken naar de kaart natuurlijk, want die heb ik nog steeds niet aangewezen. Kijk, hier ligt het mooie Maastricht, zoals we kunnen zien. En ja, vandaag ligt Turkije op tafel. Erg belangrijk dat we de geopolitieke ontwikkelingen in Turkije volgen. En ja, waarom is dit zo belangrijk? Nou, misschien mondt het uit tot een nieuwe oorlog. Ja, het zou zomaar kunnen. En ja, waar heb je het over, Rogier? Nou, we weten dat er een oorlog is in Syrië, die is nog steeds gaande. In 2011 werden dus een aantal jongens doodgeschoten door politie. Nou, het heeft voor een machtsvacuüm gezorgd, grote demonstraties in Syrië. En daardoor hebben dus proxies, kleine legertjes, hebben dus Syrië geïnfiltreerd en ook geprobeerd om Damascus, de hoofdstad van Syrië, omver te werpen. Ja. En we weten dat in Syrië, er zijn allerlei groeperingen van mensen, maar de grootste groepering eigenlijk in Syrië, het zijn toch wel de Koerden. Ja. En de Koerden zitten op de grens van Turkije. Ja. En we weten, de Sykes-Picot-akkoord heeft eigenlijk min of meer een Koerdische staat beloofd, maar die is er nooit van gekomen. De Koerden leven eigenlijk zonder een eigen staat in verschillende landen. Je hebt dus Turkije, Syrië, een groot deel van noordoosten van Syrië, Irak en nog Iran. Ja. En Turkije is degene die het opneemt tegen de Koerden. So there is a Kurdish population within a couple of countries. The most Kurds are in Turkey. There are some in the northeast of Syria and also Iraq and Iran. And Turkey is the only country fighting off the Kurdish who want to form their own state, right? Dus we gaan even kijken naar een filmpje die het uitgebreid uitlegt. Why Turkey is preparing to invade Syria again. Ja, het is al eerder gebeurd. They invaded Syria already a couple of years ago. This is because of the Kurdish population over there in Syria, who is supported by the U.S., right? So you have a NATO country fighting an army supported by the U.S. It's like, oh my God. Ja, we gaan even hier naar kijken.
Istanbul, the largest city in Turkey. 6 Turkish civilians were killed in the blast and more than 80 others were wounded. And within 24 hours of the attack, the Turkish government unilaterally blamed the Kurdish separatist groups operating in Turkey and Syria known as the PKK and SDF, despite each of their claims of having nothing to do with it. And within a week of the attack, Turkish jets and artillery systems began bombing PKK and SDF positions across northern Syria and Iraq in a campaign of reprisals. The Turkish president, Tayyip Recep Erdogan, then went another step even further and insisted that these aerial and artillery attacks on Kurdish positions in Iraq and Syria were only the beginning. On the 21st of November, he threatened to order a full-scale ground invasion into northern Syria against the Kurds there in order to establish what he and his supporters have long been calling for: a 30-kilometer deep safe zone just across the Turkish border into Syrian territory that would be occupied and policed by the Turkish army. As all eyes in the West and NATO have been focused on the war in Ukraine, the decade-long brutal civil war in Syria continues. And with this upcoming invasion into the country from Turkey looming, the conflict appears to be entering a new and potentially even more dangerous phase than before, that could see the United States having to refocus its attention back on the troubled country once again. And in order to understand why Turkey is considering this invasion into Syria now and the potential consequences it will have on the war, you have to understand a few basic geopolitical and demographic realities around the area that are pushing them into it first. Let's begin with the fact that Turkey isn't entirely an ethnically homogenous nation-state in the same way that other countries are, like France, Japan, or Germany. When you look at an ethnic map of the country, you'll notice that the Turks make up a majority nearly everywhere except for the entire southeastern corner, which is demographically dominated instead by the Kurds, an Iranian ethnic group who speak their own separate language that by far make up the largest ethnic and linguistic minority in Turkey. There are around 15 million of them who live within Turkey today, and that means they make up around a fifth of the entire country's population. But the Kurds don't just exist in the southeastern corner of Turkey. It's estimated that there's anywhere between 30 and 45 million Kurds who exist throughout a large area that spans across the borders of southeastern Turkey, northeastern Syria, northern Iraq, and western Iran. And because
This is what I was talking about, right? So they're stateless, and we also are going to show you guys the Sykes-Picot agreement, right? So you have a blueprint on what's really happening. So here you have the Sykes-Picot agreement, a carving up of the Ottoman Empire, and we're going to take a look at this here. Ja, dit is het Sykes-Picot-verdrag, mensen. Na de Eerste Wereldoorlog, of tijdens de Eerste Wereldoorlog, had je dus Engeland en Frankrijk die de Ottomaanse Rijk gingen verdelen en zoiets. We gaan even hier naar kijken. Even pauze zetten, zo. Terugspoelen. En zo.
because it was the only one that actually came close to being...
Nee. Daar gaat iets mis. Kijk, hier, de Ottomaanse Rijk.
...with the Central Powers and declared war on the Entente, it put its very existence under threat. About 4 seconds after receiving the declaration of war, the British, French and Russians were already discussing how to divide the Ottoman territory. In the end, there were several agreements the Entente powers came to. The 1915 Constantinople Agreement gave Russia, well, Constantinople and also Eastern Anatolia. And the Treaty of London, signed in the same year, gave Italy this land to the south. Yet the most important agreement, because it was the only one that actually came close to being implemented, was the Sykes-Picot Agreement of 1916. Now, during the war, the Ottomans were beset on all sides. There were, of course, the British and the French fighting them across the Mediterranean and Mesopotamia. There were also the Russians to the north, the Greeks to the west, and in the south they faced the Arab revolt and calls for the creation of a Jewish state. It won't surprise you that not everyone could get what they wanted from the collapse of the Ottomans, and so Britain came up with a cunning plan to keep everyone on board. They lied. In early 1916, Britain offered the Sharif of Mecca, Hussein bin Ali, an empire of his own if he assisted the Entente against the Ottomans. He would be given all of this land to be known as the Kingdom of Arabia, which would be free of European interference, which of course he was happy to agree to, and so began the Arab Revolt. Yet, whilst Hussein was fighting this revolt, the British and French were negotiating what would actually be done with the land. These negotiations saw Sir Mark Sykes on the British side and Georges Picot on the French one determining who would get what. France had previously spent a lot of money in these lands and so was expecting a return for its investments. Now, Britain did tell the French that they had offered these lands to the Arabs, but France refused to relinquish its claims, though, seeing it as unfair that Britain would receive lands in Arabia whilst France would not. In the end, after many months of negotiation, Sykes and Picot came to an agreement, which was inventively named the Sykes-Picot Agreement, and it divided up the Ottoman lands as such. Hussein would get his Kingdom of Arabia, but it would be much smaller than the one promised. He also wouldn't be told about this change until after the war, because otherwise he might stop fighting, and that wouldn't do. Britain would gain a brand new colony, Lower Mesopotamia, centred on Basra, and would gain a puppet state here in northern Arabia, centred in Kirkuk. The French would gain a directly ruled colony here and a puppet state centred on Mosul. France had pushed hard to gain Mosul because of that sweet, sweet oil, and Britain granted it solely on the condition that France also take all of this territory too. Why? Well, because Britain had agreed to Russia gaining Eastern Anatolia, and given that the two were rivals in Asia, Britain didn't want to share a border with them. It was also agreed that Palestine would become an internationally run protectorate. So after the Ottomans were defeated, how much of this agreement was actually implemented? Well, not much. When the Russian Empire dropped out of the war and fell to communist revolution, their needs were no longer important, and so Britain could push for more land to the north. Furthermore, just prior to the British troops entering Jerusalem, London issued the Balfour Declaration. This was Britain's formal support for the creation of a Jewish nation, which would remain under sole British control until it was ready to be independent. Now, the reason why Britain could unilaterally renege on its agreements with France was that it was British imperial troops, not French ones, which conquered these areas. In the end, Britain gained all of this land under numerous colonies and protectorates, whereas France gained Syria and Lebanon. As you may have guessed, King Hussein was a tad upset about being betrayed like this, and for a time he ruled over the Kingdom of Hejaz. That was until it was conquered by the British-backed Sultan of Najd, Abdulaziz ibn Saud, whose lands would soon after become the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. In the end, only the British really got what they wanted, and the long-term consequences of the agreement are immeasurably important. The states of Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, Israel, Kuwait, Jordan and Saudi Arabia all owe their borders to this agreement. The modern Middle East was born. I hope you enjoyed this episode and thank you for watching, with extra thanks to these patrons you can see on screen for their continued support. And an extra special thanks to James Bisonet, David Archaeologist, as
Oh, there you go. There you go. That's explained within 3 minutes. And yeah, let's get back to the other video I was showing about Turkey, right? So Turkey wants to invade Syria. They want to make a border within Syria beyond their own border, right? A buffer zone, they call it. Ja, ze willen dus een grens maken binnen hun, of buiten hun eigen grens, binnen de grenzen van Syrië. Een soort van bufferzone willen ze maken.
These tens of millions of Kurds are divided between the borders of these 4 separate countries. The Kurds represent one of the largest nations of people in the world without a state of their own. And that means that from time to time, there have been nationalist calls within the Kurdish area here to create that state that would, hypothetically, be called Kurdistan. However, Turkey, Syria, Iraq, and Iran have all brutally repressed these Kurdish calls for statehood over various different times over the past century for the very simple fact that if any one group of Turkish, Syrian, Iraqi, or Iranian Kurds ever managed to achieve independence or autonomy, it could end up causing a cascading domino effect that would unite all of the other Kurdish regions into that single state of Kurdistan. If, for example, the Kurds in Syria managed to achieve independence or autonomy from the government of Syria, then it could serve as a free base of operations for the rest of the Kurds in Turkey, Iraq, and Iran to operate out of and work towards their own independences and the greater goal of Kurdistan, which, in Turkey's case, would result in the loss of basically the entire southeast of the country, along with the millions of people who live there who pay taxes and contribute to the economy. And that is something that for the past century, the Turkish government has found to be completely unacceptable. Turkey has thus repressed the Kurdish people within their own borders for nearly a century. They weren't even officially classified as being a separate identity from Turks until 1991. The words Kurds and Kurdistan have previously been banned in any language in the country, and after 1980, the Kurdish language itself was officially outlawed in public and private life as well for the next decade. It is still, to this day, illegal in Turkey to use the Kurdish language as a language of instruction in both public and private schools, and is only
Ja, ze gaan zelfs een taal verbieden. Een taal wordt verboden. So you're not allowed to talk Kurdish within Turkey, right? You might get arrested for that. Very, very sad thing to see, because we all share this world, right? Maybe it's a bit utopian.
only allowed to be taught as a subject. As a consequence of this repression, there has long been a degree of activism within the Kurdish areas of southeastern Turkey for increased autonomy from the government or outright independence, backed up by both peaceful protesters and armed guerrilla warfare and terror attacks. The most prominent and violent of the Kurdish separatist forces to emerge in Turkey eventually became the Kurdistan Workers' Party, better known as the PKK. In 1984, the PKK declared a Kurdish uprising against the Turkish government and started a full-scale insurgency campaign. And over the decades that have followed, the PKK expanded their operations in the fight against the Turkish state into the Kurdish majority areas of Iraq and Syria, and more than 40,000 people are believed to have been killed in the fighting and the terror, most of them being Kurdish civilians. Thus, Turkey has spent decades fighting a brutal campaign to stamp out the PKK and Kurdish separatism from the southeast of the country.
What Turkey needs to do is come to the table, right, and talk to the Kurds, right? You want to be an autonomous state? Okay, you can, you can have your own army, you can have your own this, your own that, but you still fall under the Kurdish state. That may be a solution. That may be a solution, right? So, and if you have an autonomous region within Turkey, that would mean that they have their own parliament and their own set of rules and their own laws, outside of the Turkish laws, right? That could be a good solution, right? So, not only do we see a lot of anger and hatred towards people within Turkey, towards the Kurds, and very, very sad thing to see here. But this is happening, people. This is happening. So Turkey is going to invade Syria, whilst the Kurds are supported by the US, right, in the war against Bashar al-Assad, which is still going on. You have Aleppo and Idlib, right? Here we have Idlib, and those cities are still held by rebels against the Syrian government, right? And they're also not very friendly towards the Turkish people, right? Dus de oorlog in Syrië die woekert voort. Niet alleen wil Turkije Syrië aanvallen, maar heb je dus ook steden zoals Aleppo en Idlib die nog steeds in handen zijn van de terroristen die Damascus omver willen werpen. Ja. Dus ik zou zeggen, Erdogan, ga rondom tafel met Syrië, met Irak, met Iran en ook met de Koerden om hier een goede oplossing van te kunnen maken. Wij willen geen oorlog. Hè? Want dit zorgt alleen voor meer vluchtelingen die naar Europa toe trekken. Die willen niet in een oorlogssituatie gaan zitten. Dus dan gaan ze naar Europa toe. En het is belangrijk dat we weten wat er gaande is binnen Turkije en ook Syrië en Irak, Iran. Kijk, daarom doen we dus geopolitiek. Ja? Heel veel mensen hebben zoiets van, oh die vluchtelingen, die pikken dit in, die pikken dat in. Je moet kijken naar de reden waarom de vluchtelingen komen. Ja? En ja, dit is een reden. Weer een interventie vanuit Turkije in het noorden van Syrië. Ja. En ja, dit staat nog niet vast. Het staat wel op tafel. Maar Erdogan, alsjeblieft. Ik weet dat je Nederlands begrijpt. Alsjeblieft, voer geen oorlog in Turkije. Laat het een autonoom staat zijn binnen Turkije. Dat is misschien wel de beste oplossing. So Erdogan, I told you in Dutch, but now I'm going to say it in English. Let the Kurds have an autonomous state within Turkey. Right? This may be the best solution. Because we do not want war. Wij willen geen oorlog. Ja, we willen niet dat ons land weer overspoeld wordt door allerlei vluchtelingen. En ja, ik snap best dat ze hier naartoe willen komen en zoiets. Maar wij hebben geen ruimte meer. Nederland is een klein land. Als je het vergelijkt met Sudan bijvoorbeeld. We gaan eens even uitzoomen en dan gaan we kijken hoe groot Nederland is in vergelijking met andere landen. Nee? Nou, hier hebben we Nederland. Het is nog niet eens aangegeven, want dit is Duitsland. Zo'n klein land hebben wij. We gaan even inzoomen. Zo. Hier hebben we, this is the Netherlands. Now, how many times could the Netherlands fit into, say for instance, France, right? Let's keep it within the European Union, right? How many times can the Netherlands fit into France? Or Spain? Or Portugal? Or Italy? Maybe Germany, huh? Belgium is somewhat smaller. Wij als Nederland, wij dagen Moskou uit. Ja? Om Oekraïne. Ja. Dus ongelooflijk. Kijk, moet je zien hoe klein Nederland is. Nou, we gaan eens even kijken hoe groot Rusland is. Hier hebben we Rusland. Een land dat 8 tijdzones heeft. Ja. En heel erg veel mensen binnen Rusland. So the Netherlands, which is not even located on the map anymore, such a small country we have, is fighting against Russia. Right? You see how crazy our prime minister really is? Het is echt ongelooflijk, mensen. Maar wij nemen het op tegen een atoommacht. Ja? Dan hebben wij zelf ook atoomwapens, maar die zijn niet eens van ons. Ja? We nemen het op tegen een atoommacht. En ja, wij misbruiken Oekraïne daarvoor. Het is echt triest, echt heel erg triest. En ja, zoals eerder gezegd bij RHTVLive, zijn er drukpunten in de wereld. Ja? So there are pressure points in the world. As I've shown you before, Turkey and Syria, you know, the Kurds, that is a pressure point. And if you put enough pressure on it, you'll get war, you know. Als je er genoeg druk op geeft, dan krijg je oorlog. Ja. China, ja, Taiwan is ook een mooi voorbeeld. Ja, China wil Taiwan binnen het mainland erkennen. En Taiwan zegt van nee, wij zijn de originele China. Jullie zijn de foute China. Ja. En China wil dus Taiwan gaan innemen. Nou, waarom is dit nou zo van belang? Taiwan, hier komen dus alle chips vandaan. Waar je het mobiel en je computer en zoiets, komt allemaal uit Taiwan. Ja. Daarom is het van geostrategisch belang dat Taiwan in handen is van Amerika en consorten. Ja, alleen China wil dat niet. China ziet nu een mooie mogelijkheid om dus Taiwan aan te vallen vanwege de Russische interventie in Oekraïne. So China now sees a very good opportunity to invade Taiwan because of the war in Ukraine right now. Right? So here we have Taiwan, and over here we have Ukraine. Now, these are very dangerous times that we live in. Why is Taiwan so important? Well, it's because they make all the chips, you know, not the edible chips, but the chips that are in your computer, in your phone, in all the technological advancements we have, that comes from Taiwan, right? And within China, there are 2 Chinas. There's mainland China, the CCP, Chinese Communist Party, and we have Taiwan, which the Chinese call Taipei, and that is run by a Democratic Party, right? Democratically elected party. Now, I don't know the internal stuff about Taiwan, who's in power right now, but that is pretty dangerous because the CCP does not want democracy. Now, Blinken went to China. Yep. And Blinken was there and had a very long talk with the Chinese. Yeah. and we're going to take a look at Blinken over there in China. Wait a minute. Zo, even die aanklikken. Wait a minute. Hup. Zo, terugspoelen. Got a sec? The video does not want to load. Very so terugspoelen. So we're going to take a look at two guys reporting on Blinken, right? So this is Duran, two guys that know a lot of geopolitical stuff, right? They know the insides, and yeah, it seems like Joe Biden blew up at Xi Jinping because Blinken was basically, you know, had a talk with the Chinese and had a 7-hour talk with a general or somewhat. We're going to take a look at this here.
About Blinken's trip to China, but more importantly, let's talk about how within 24 hours of that trip to China, where it looked like a little bit of progress was made. I don't want to say a lot of progress, a little bit, even though I think that China pretty much sent some interesting messages to Blinken, and they basically told him it's time for action, not words. That's basically the message that they sent to Blinken. You know, everything that you've told us has you've never managed to keep your word at whatever you've told us. So now we want action. That was pretty much the result of the meetings. It didn't go too well for Blinken, but there was a little bit of progress made between the U.S. and China. But within 24 hours, it seemed like that all was just demolished by Joe Biden calling Xi Jinping a dictator. So I mean, that's, you know, whatever little progress was indeed made from Blinken's trip to Beijing, 24 hours later, Biden is telling supporters in California that Xi Jinping is a dictator, all because the stupid balloon incident.
Yeah,
ridiculous.
Which he's revived. And by the way, for those who say that all of this was just Joe being vacant and all over the place, and talking emptily and God save the Queen type sort of things, I would point out that these words have been published also on the White House website. So one can't just write this off as just Joe doing his thing again. Let's just go back to that Blinken trip, because it's very interesting. So there was the balloon incident. The Chinese were absolutely furious about the balloon incident. And they basically said, look, we can't deal with these people. We're not answering the phone to them. We're not going to speak to Biden because, well, Xi Jinping has already said to Biden to his face in a virtual meeting. We have the Chinese readout that says that, look, you tell me one thing and then you go away and the opposite happens, which is as close to saying to somebody's face in a diplomatic discussion that you're lying as it's possible to get. So the Chinese were really angry at the balloon incident. They've lost patience with the administration. They were refusing to have contacts. So Blinken was supposed to visit China. They put that off. Biden was trying to phone and have a meeting with Xi Jinping, or at least a conversation with Xi Jinping. The Chinese wouldn't answer the phone. Lloyd Austin was trying to contact the Chinese Defense Ministry, and so was Milley as well. And again, the Chinese military weren't answering the phone. So the US began to get concerned, and it seems, we've never had this absolutely confirmed, but it seems that Biden eventually got the Chinese to accept William Burns, the CIA director, who supposedly, and I think that we can take this as pretty much confirmed, went to Beijing on a secret visit, basically to try to get communications up and running again. And William Burns is a professional diplomat. He's somebody who knows how to choose his words correctly. He's had experience. He was formerly ambassador in Moscow. So he did his job. And the Chinese said, right, well, let's invite Blinken over and see how it goes this time. So Blinken comes and he is put through the grinder. I mean, this is an extraordinary visit. I mean, you have to really read the Chinese websites to get a readouts to get a real sense of what happened. Because firstly, he meets Qin Gang, who's the new Chinese foreign minister, who's proving to be very tough, and Qin Gang puts Blinken through a 7.5-hour meeting. Remember, Qin Gang speaks English. He was formerly ambassador to Washington. He puts Blinken through a 7.5-hour discussion. We're told that it's candid, which is diplomatic code for saying that the Chinese didn't mince words. And if you read the readout, it's basically our relations are worse than they have ever been at any time since the 70s. It's your fault. You've got to change your stance. We are expecting you to make all the big moves. We want to emphasize again that Taiwan is for us the most core of core issues. There's not going to be any further moves towards supporting Taiwanese independence. The Chinese readouts, this is the official translated English language version of the Chinese readout. Apparently the Chinese version is even stronger. I can't read Chinese. But anyway, the Chinese version actually says that Qin Gang made demands of Blinken, and which again is unusual. I mean, you don't just straightforwardly say that, China demands X, Y, Z from the other side. And from what we can tell, Blinken just had to sit back and take it, because his priority was to...
You gotta sit back and take it. Yep. Dus Blinken gaat naar China toe om te onderhandelen over dit of dat. En wordt door de mangelmolen gelegd. Eerst praat hij met een onderste. En daarna praat hij met de bovenste van die onderste. En daarna praat hij met Xi Jinping. Het heeft toch wel lange tijd geduurd. En er staat nou wel een vergadering op tafel met China. Maar gezien het buitenlands beleid in Amerika, het is echt rampzalig. So, given the foreign policy of the US, it is very, very bad. And my solution would be, China, you want to have Taiwan, right? Well, you can have Taiwan under one condition. You stop with the CCP, right? That's our condition. Then you can have Taiwan. Dus dat zou moeten gebeuren. Dat wij als Westen zeggen van nou, China, je mag wel Taiwan hebben, maar dan moet je ophouden met de CCP. De Chinese Communistische Partij. Dan moet je een democratische toer gaan. Ja. En ook transparantie binnen overheidsgerelateerde zaken. En niet zeggen van ja, dat is opgelost hoor, dat is opgelost. So that's what needs to be done, right? Now, if you look at the Korean Peninsula, we have North and South Korea, which is also a problem, right? Because North Korea sees everyone surrounding North Korea as an enemy. They see China as an enemy, whilst they do get money, under the table. They see South Korea as an enemy. They see Japan as an enemy. So everyone surrounding North Korea is an enemy, according to North Korea itself, right? Now, what can we do to solve the situation here? I mean, Kim Jong-un does not want to relinquish his power, right? So what can we do over here on this part of the world? Well, we do the same thing as we theorize with Turkey, an autonomous state within the Korean Peninsula, right? An autonomous state with their own army, with their own set of rules, their own government and this and that, but still under the Korean Peninsula, right? So that means you can unify both countries. It may take like 10 or 20 years or whatever, but you can unify these two countries. That will, then North Korea will not shoot missiles to Japan, right? Which they've done. This way you can unify both countries. Make a Korea and make them sign for the new Korean Peninsula, right? And this is a step forward toward world peace. We don't want these two countries to have war with each other, right? As South Korea says, we're not in war with North Korea, but North Korea still thinks that they are in war with all these other countries. And I can imagine that, If you look at the Korean War, it was fought in the 50s, right? North Korea was bombed. It was all gone. Everything was gone. Everything. Cities. A lot of lives have been lost, right? And nothing has been gained. You have a communist state that, has power because of the ideals of the revolution, right? Dus maak er één Korea van. Ja, het zal wel enige jaren duren voordat het echt één Korea wordt. Maar dan kom je toch dichter bij elkaar. There are so many problems. If we look at Myanmar, for example, formerly known as Burma, there's a military coup going on over there. The country is in blackout, right? No media, and very, very sad to see what's happening there. It's also a pressure point. Ja. En zo zijn er meer drukpunten. Sudan bijvoorbeeld. Hoe staat het ervoor in Sudan? Nou, de gouverneur van Darfur, het zuidoosten van Sudan, niet het oosten, het zuidwesten bedoel ik, van Sudan, hier ongeveer bij Tjaad, zuidwest, die gouverneur is doodgeschoten, dat hebben we laatst laten zien, een aantal dagen terug. En ja, er wordt nog steeds gevochten in Sudan, tussen militairen en tussen de militaire proxy die meehielp met de coup een aantal jaar geleden. Ja. Dus nog steeds oorlog daar. En dat is ook een heel moeilijke situatie. wat eigenlijk gedaan zou moeten worden is dat het leger zegt van nou, we vechten niet meer. En ook die proxy, we vechten niet meer. En dat zou eigenlijk een interventie zou goed doen, zeg maar. Ja, dan ben ik niet voor interventies, maar dat is een interne conflict en een derde land zou beter kunnen oplossen dan een buurland of daar liggen de haat en zoiets. Dus een interventie in Sudan, ja, dat zou enigszins goed zijn, maar dan moet je ook goed voorbereid zijn. En het is ook niet de bedoeling dat je dus gaat interveneren in hun politiek. Nee, dat moet je dus niet gaan doen. Laat het aan die mensen over. Ja, maar sta erbij als derde partij en hou die twee partijen uit elkaar. Dus, we hebben weer heel wat geopolitiek gegeven. So an intervention in Sudan, that would be a good idea. I'm not for interventions, but a third party would be good to separate these two fighting entities, the army and the proxy, you know. Nou, dat is ook opgelost. Zo kunnen we nog de hele wereld overgaan. En ja. We're trying to save the world by giving solutions, right? Now, Venezuela, that is one big problem within Southern America, right? Venezuela is a very big problem. It's a very rich country, but it's led by a socialist government that only helps their own people. The people that vote for the party, they get help. You know, that is wrong. So, new elections in Venezuela, according to me, right? Dus dat zou moeten gebeuren in Venezuela. Geef de oppositie nou een kans om te kunnen regeren. En ja, die kans die krijgen ze niet. Dat kun je toch wel een dictatuur noemen. Ja, dictaat vanuit de staat. En Caracas is super armoedig. Een aantal jaar geleden was er een olifant in de dierentuin van Caracas. Die was doodgegaan omdat er geen voedsel meer was voor de dieren in de dierentuin. Ja, heel erg. Daar hebben we nog een actie voor gedaan. Maar dat, ja, jammer. De olifant was al dood. Dus, Venezuela zeer, zeer corrupt. En dat moet aangepakt worden. Ja. Nou, hebben we dus ook Brazilië onder Lula. En die wil dus een Zuid-Amerikaanse Unie maken. Ja. En Venezuela was wel een hele tijd, mocht niet Brazilië ingaan en zo. Nu Lula aan de macht is, kom er maar bij hoor, kom er maar bij. Ja. Weet die knak was ook alweer in Maduro. Ja, in Venezuela. Kijk, Maduro, even om wat achtergrond te geven. Eerst had je dus Hugo Chavez. Ja, kennen we die nog? Die zei bij de VN, toen Bush daar was, ja, de duivel is hier geweest. Ja, serieus. Maar Chavez is doodgegaan aan kanker. Ja. En Chavez heeft de macht overgedragen naar Maduro. Dus er is niet gestemd op Maduro en toch is hij president geworden. Nou, dat heeft voor heel veel onrust gezorgd binnen Venezuela. En zijn er wel verkiezingen geweest, maar ja, het echt eerlijk is gegaan, dat is maar de vraag. En zo blijft Maduro dus aan de macht daar zo. Dan heb je dus internationaal gezien, je hebt een oppositieleider daar in Venezuela, Guaido. En die wordt internationaal gezien als de president van Venezuela, hoewel die niet op gestemd is. Niemand heeft, ruime minderheid heeft daarop gestemd. Dus je kan hem geen president noemen, maar internationaal gezien wordt hij wel gezien als president. Ja? Amerika erkent hem als president. Die erkennen dus Maduro dus niet als president. Nou, en als we gaan kijken naar de grootmachten, zien we dus dat nogmaals Amerika Guaido als president ziet van Venezuela. En Rusland ziet dus Maduro als president van Venezuela. Om twee grootmachten maar aan te geven, even het verschil aanduiden. So, the United States says Maduro is a dictator and Guaido, the opposition leader, is the president of Venezuela, right? And Russia says, no, it's Maduro who's president of Venezuela. To give some geopolitics here, right? Ja mensen, volgens mij zijn we toch al best wel lang bezig. En we kunnen alsmaar doorgaan. Echt interessante gespreksonderwerpen hier. Ja. We zijn nog niet in gaan zoomen bij landen. Ja, maar ja, behalve dan Turkije en Syrië. Maar we geven het overal plaatje. Ja. En ja, dit doen we gratis en voor niks. So, we're not going to zoom in countries, even though I showed you Turkey and Syria, right? But we're just going to give some geopolitical grounds here. And that is for nothing, for free. Yep, just to warn you guys on what's happening in the world, right? So, on this side of the continent, we have the European Union, even though England is not part of the Union anymore, but still reliant on Europe, right? So, and on this part of the continent, Canada, United States, and Mexico, they want to make the North American Union. Yep. And that is on table. And, you know, it's still not signed, it's still theoretical, but it is on table. And you guys have to watch out for their plans, you know. If you think that I'm making this up, nope, I'm not. I'm going to show you something. Yeah. So they want to make a North American Union. And let's see. Here, the North American Union is a theoretical economic and political continental union of Canada, Mexico, and the United States. So they want to centralize the power, right? And this is what's happened in Europe. Now, it's not finished yet, but it's still on the table, you know. Very, very dangerous times that we live in. And, you know, we have to be vigilant. Ja. Dus de Europese Unie is gemaakt. Hè. De volgende stap is de Noord-Amerikaanse Unie. Daarop volgend de Zuid-Amerikaanse Unie. Ja, Lula en consorten zijn bij elkaar gekomen. En ja, zo willen ze dus ook in het Midden-Oosten een unie maken. In Afrika een aantal unies. Dus Noord, Centraal en Zuid-Afrikaanse Unie. En ook de Indonesië en de eilanden, de Filipijnen en zo, daar willen ze ook een unie voor maken. Australië meegeteld. En ook China en de Aziatisch continent, daar willen ze ook een unie maken. Ja, en Rusland, die zou eigenlijk ook mee moeten doen daarin. Maar daar doen ze niet in mee. Ja. So they want to make unions everywhere around the world, right? The South American Union, the African Union divided into three, North, Central, and South. And they also want to divide Asia into a union. And also Australia. The only country not working with the global plan is Russia. And this is why Russia is being demonized, right? Dus, dit allemaal uitgelegd hebbende, ik hoop dat we weer wat geleerd hebben. We hebben weer Sykes-Picot naar voren gehaald en andere dergelijke dingen. Dit was even een uurtje geopolitiek vanuit het mooie, warme Maastricht. En ja, we gaan zo afsluiten. Maar eerst even kijken of Patrick Lancaster nog een nieuw filmpje heeft. Ik dacht het niet. We zijn erg benieuwd naar wat er gebeurt in de Donbass-regio, dan wel in Rusland. Ja, maar Patrick Lancaster heeft nog geen nieuw filmpje. Dus we gaan afsluiten. Natuurlijk met Natasha Maeve. En ja, ik hoop dat jullie er weer van genoten hebben. En ja, we denken oplossingsgericht. En ja, wie weet, misschien komen die oplossingen ooit naar voren en wordt dat ook toegepast. So we gave a lot of solutions, right? North Korea, South Korea, the Korean Peninsula, Sudan, and all these other countries. Right? We gave enough solutions, and who knows, maybe these solutions will be used. We're going to shut off with Natasha Maeve. So, and Chronicles of Self-Expression. There you go.
These are my chronicles of self-expression. They told me I'm phenomenal, unaware of the depression. The food is poison, the rent's too expensive. My opinions are offensive, yet I'm hypersensitive. The city's too loud, the lights too bright. I'm gasping for air, my chest feels tight. I breathe in pollution, I breathe out the knowing this society is an institution. This is reality in high resolution. I walk downtown, there's a homeless encampment. They're high round clock, security's more like an experiment. Ultra, ultra, ultra in the brain. I see it crystal clear, I even quit the Mary Jane. It's enough to make me go insane. It's enough to make me hop a train. It's enough to make me wonder when it's gonna change. Moments keep passing, it all stays the same. When do you think freedom will be something for all? Hang hang on tight, because first we had to fall crashing down. Something controlling our lives wants us underground. Hang on tight, there's a good chance we can make it. We're being abused and controlled, but we don't have to take it. I heard so many say we can't wake up at the same time. I know together as one, we're a great mind. Haven't you heard somebody say that they heard it through the grapevine? So spread the word and live it. There are no masters in our lives, only the strong will survive. Keep your heart gold, don't let your heart be cold. Don't let your heart be bought or sold, keep your heart gold. These are my chronicles of self-expression. You told me I'm phenomenal, unaware of the depression. The food is poison, the rent's too expensive. My opinions are offensive, yet I'm hypersensitive. The city's too loud, the lights are too bright. I'm gasping for air, my chest feels tight. I breathe in pollution, I breathe out the knowing that society's an institution. This is reality and high resolution. I walk to the forest, this is all that feels right. My chest loosens, it's no longer tight. My mind chills out, there's nothing to fight. I think I'll start a fire, and I'll stay here for a while. This is the only place where I'll really ever smile. I never want to go back, I know one day I won't. I'll be living off the land, don't need beer, smokes, tokes, or dope. All I need is peace and quiet, and to live by the words that I wrote. I hope the cops stay the fuck away, and the government too. I'm done being treated like a criminal, because your mask is see-through, so fuck you. And anyone who doubted me, good luck to you. And all they use is attachments, you're stuck to, they're stuck to you. Good luck to you, fuck you. These are my chronicles of self-expression. These are my chronicles of self-expression. These are my chronicles of self-expression.
Thank you, Natasha May, for your beautiful rap song. Ja, mensen, we zitten alweer tegen het einde van de uitzending. We hebben al heel veel laten zien en zoiets. Nou ja, morgen zijn we er niet. Maar overmorgen zijn we er wel weer. Dan gaan we weer praten over geopolitiek. Ja, want we weten, de geopolitieke verhoudingen die verschuiven steeds. Ja, morgen kan het een heel andere situatie zijn als vandaag. So we'll be back on Sunday. And we know the geopolitical alignments shift all the time. Tomorrow can be another geopolitical alignment. So who knows? We'll be back on Sunday. And we'll see what's going to happen tomorrow. And thank you all for watching. Dank voor kijken, dank voor delen. Vergeet niet, jullie